everyone, it's so good to be here with another pattern idea. I recently received a bunch of these miscuts of fat quarter flowery fabric. I've removed some of the ones that are on the lower contrast because I really want to work with ones that are on the bolder side. And then I also have a bunch of scraps of different backgrounds. These I'll call my low volume, and I also have this one as well. So I have a pattern idea, so I'm going to put this together. What I'm going to do to start this all off is I'm going to press them all nicely, and then I'm going to cut them into 5-inch squares. So once I've done that, I'll show you what we do next. For this pattern, we will also need a quantity of 4-patch squares that measure 5 inches to match the other ones that I've cut down. So what we need to do is, what I'm doing is I'm taking approximately 3-inch wide strips. You can do as narrow as 2 3/4. I'm doing a seam down to join them together, and then I'll subcut them. I've also found that you can take 2 squares right side together and that are 6 inches or 5 3/4 and stitch 1/4 of an inch on either side, cut them apart, and then you have 4 patches. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Let me just do this and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so for the 4 patches, this is the traditional way. You can also use squares if you want, but I like to do anything that makes it a little bit faster to do. So these are 2 3/4 3-inch strips. You'll notice this one is kind of wonky. All I did is I squared up the one edge and I did my 1/4 or my 1/4-inch seam, and then what I'll do is I will line up here and then cut these into 3-inch sections, and then when they're sewn together, these aren't pressed, this is your 4-patch, this will get pressed nicely and then trimmed to 5 inches. So that's the traditional way. Then I was playing around because I had some odd size fabric, and these are approximately 6 inches square, so I'm putting right sides together. As you know me, I like to use the back side of fabric if I have it. So what I've done is I've lined them up. I've drawn a line down the center, which is 3 inches over, and sort of like a half square triangle. I'm going to sew 1/4 of an inch on either side, and then I'll cut here, and then I'll have a 2 up of each, and then I'll be able to flip it around and finish off the 4 patches. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've sewn 2 lines here away from the center line, so I'll just show you like that. That's what it looks like. And then the idea is to take in between both and cut them apart. And then what we will do is press them to the dark side so they're like this, and then you can cut them in half like that, and then join them, flip one the other way, and then you have your 4-patch. This will equal 2 4-patch squares once they're done. So this is a nice cheater multiple way to do it as well. So I hope this makes sense. What I've done is I've pressed the seams, and now I've got right sides together with the opposites locking together in the center, and I've pinned them. And then I've gone over 3 inches and I've drawn a center line, and then we will stitch on either side of that a skinny 1/4 inch or a scant 1/4 inch. We'll slice them apart, and then we will have 2 4 patches, one on this side and then one on this side. So that's a good way to get 4 up. Okay, this is how I have some of the blocks laid out so far, but I have a plan. So stick around, and I'll show you what we do next to add some more pizzazz to this layout. Next up, we need about 98 2.5-inch squares. So because I'm using more of a floral pattern, I picked out a bunch of strips that I had gifted to me. So I'm going to cut these all up. I'm trying to keep with a bit of anything that has a lilac or a purple hue to it, just to blend it in with the rest of the blocks. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how we're going to use them. So I've cut some background fabric that is 5 inches square, and there'll be 49 of those. We're going to set aside 13 and leave them with nothing on it, so pretend those aren't here. And then we're going to pair up the rest with the 2.5-inch squares that we had cut earlier. We've drawn a line from corner to corner, and we're going to stitch on that line and then flip these over. So these are the flip and stitch. If you don't like doing flip and stitch, you can certainly do these as HSTs and join them on the bottom of other fabric, or you could do them as flying geese. Because I'm using a bunch of odds and sods of smaller fabric, that's why I've chosen to do it this way. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these like this, press them open, to check to make sure they're okay, and then I will end up eventually trimming off this extra and putting these into my extra fabric bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and again we'll be doing this for 36 squares. So I've got these all sewn, and this pile I've actually pressed them, and this pile I've only set the seams. So that is basically putting an iron down like that, and it forces the stitches to go into the fabric below, and it helps set them nicely. And then what I'll do is I'll press these open like this. I have to tell you that once these get sewn together, they are not going to have a nice point to them. There will be a bit of a gap there. If that bothers you, then you may want to go with the flying geese method. I'm not too concerned because this is going to be a scrappy look, and I'll be happy with how it's going to turn out. So I'm going to go ahead and trim all these back sides. So make sure you hold this up and you're not cutting here to cut the front off. So you want to open that up and cut this part away. And all of these I'm going to save them, put them in my squares. You can also add another seamed line of stitching line like this, and cut them like that, and then you'll have a bunch of ready-made half square triangles. Depends on how much extra sewing you want to do now or whether you want to do it later. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to trim these and leave them as they are. And then if you want to, you could square these to 6 inches, totally up to you. I probably won't. And then I'll show you how we start assembling our blocks. Okay, so thank you for sticking around. This is how it will all lay out. And I did make a counting error when it comes to the flip and stitch on the plain 6-inch or 5-inch squares. We actually need all 49 of them to be done that way. So this is how it'll all lay out. So I am going to start putting this together, and I'll show you the sections that I do, and then we will finish this up. So now it's time for assembly, and what I'm going to do is start in the upper left hand corner, work across the top row, and then down to the next, and then the following, and then the last row. Each row will have a block with 9 pieces that need to be pieced together. They are not all the same, just the nature of how this goes together, and I'm not going to get myself all concerned about whether this matches with this one or whatever. It is scrappy after all. So I'm going to go ahead and piece this. when I move to the next one, I'll take a picture, and then I'll just take a picture until they're all done, and then I'll take another look in to show you how it'll all go together, and then we'll be done. So hang in there, we're almost there. Do you remember all the HSTs that we had to trim back before we pressed open the seams, like over here? Well, I've got a big pile sitting here, and because they're already back to back, I'm using them as leaders and enders in between each row. So just a neat way to use up some scraps, and these will make cute little HSTs. I'll probably make them into a donation placemat. Okay, so I finished piecing it all together. It measures 45 inches wide by 55 inches deep without any borders. I have a couple ideas about how to do that, so keep posted and I'll show you what I come up with. So in the meantime, if you would like a pattern, please email me at sewwithdebee@gmail.com. Info will be in the video description if you didn't catch that information. And as always, sew safely and sew with Debee. Have a great day, and thank you for joining me.